the old coat, and the first invitation. If I'd been paying closer attention, I would have heard the apology in his footsteps before he even spoke. The kitchen was full of the small sounds of evening. Water simmering on the stove, the ticking clock above the fridge, the low hum of the radio, but his shoes on the tile had a hesitation I recognized from when he was little and came home with bad grades. "Mom," he said, hovering in the doorway. "Can I talk to you for a second?" I was stirring a pot of lentils, steam fogging the small window above the sink. Our house isn't large, but it's mine. Every cupboard, every crooked drawer pull, every dent in the table was bought with hands that scrubbed offices at dawn and balanced invoices at midnight. To most people, it looks like a modest two-bedroom on the wrong side of town. To me, it looks like freedom. "What did you break?" I asked lightly without turning. "Jokes are armor in my family." He gave a quick, thin laugh. "Nothing." Not yet. When I faced him, he was leaning against the frame, work shirt a little wrinkled, tie loosened, fingers worrying the edge of his phone. "Sophia's parents want to have us over," he blurted. "For dinner. A proper family dinner." The way he said, proper, made it sound like everything else about our life had been improper until now. "Already." I raised an eyebrow. "We haven't even finished arguing about whose recipe she ruined less." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "They're very traditional," he said carefully. "They like to do things a certain way. Big dinners, formal invitations. They care a lot about appearances." There it was, appearances. His gaze flicked past me to the back of the chair where my old brown coat hung, cuffs a little frayed, pockets sagging from years of keys and grocery lists. "I told them you'd be happy to come." He added quickly, "They're excited to meet you. I just wanted to prepare you. They can be a bit intense." "How intense?" I asked, on a scale from extra napkin ring to measuring the shine on people's shoes. He huffed out a laugh and looked at the floor. "Dad Victor is some kind of real estate guy," he said. "Big houses, big deals. Her mom's on charity boards, galas fundraisers, that kind of thing. They're nice, just very into where people come from. Schools, families, you know." I knew. I'd scrubbed the floors in houses like that once, back when rent was a miracle and dinner was whatever was cheapest in bulk. They'd talk over me about vacations and portfolios while I wiped circles around their expensive shoes. Later, when the online shop started to do well and I signed my own lease for this house, it was the same kind of people who suddenly looked me in the eye instead of through me. Nothing about me had changed except the numbers in my account. He cleared his throat. "They're going to ask questions," he warned. "About Dad?" "About your work." I told them you run a little store, but I don't think they really get what that means. Just don't be offended if they say something dumb. His shoulders tensed as if he was bracing for an impact on my behalf. "People say dumb things all the time," I said. "It keeps the air moving." "Yeah. But..." His eyes slid back to the coat. "Do you maybe want to wear the blue one? The new one? Just so they don't get the wrong idea." He winced as soon as the words left his mouth. "The wrong idea about what?" I asked, even though I already knew. "About whether we belong in their neighborhood. About whether I'm the right kind of mother for their daughter's story." He flushed. "I just don't want them to underestimate you," he said. "Or think I'm..." He trailed off, unable to finish the sentence, marrying beneath them, bringing in baggage. For a heartbeat, something old and sharp twisted in my chest. I thought of the years he doesn't remember, when I counted coins and walked him to school in that same brown coat, pretending the wind didn't cut through it. I thought of the first time I signed a supplier contract without asking anyone to explain the words. I thought of the second, smaller apartment, whose rent hits my account each month. The little portfolio my advisor sends updates on, the trust papers with his name on them folded in my bedroom drawer. I've survived bigger misunderstandings than a coat, I said, letting my tone stay easy. But I'll see what the closet gods have to offer. He nodded, relief and guilt fighting on his face. "They're really proud people," he added. "Just be yourself. Okay, maybe the quieter version." After he went to call Sophia, I turned off the stove and leaned my hands on the counter, letting the quiet settle. People like his future in-laws think appearance is the whole story. Worn fabric means empty bank account. Accent means ignorance. Small house means small life. They never imagined the woman in the old coat might own the deeds. I went to my room and opened the wardrobe. On one side hung the newer things, the navy dress I wear to supplier meetings, the wool coat that makes bank managers stand up when I enter. On the other, the survivor's clothes from the lean years, patched and faded but clean. I ran my fingers along each sleeve, feeling not just fabric but memory. It would be easy to walk in wearing my best, to meet their shallow test on their own terms. Easier still to flash numbers, names, proof. But easy doesn't always tell you what you need to know. People reveal themselves when they believe you're beneath them. That's when the quiet insults come out, the little power grabs, the truths they'd hide from an equal. I pulled out the oldest dress that still fit well and the brown coat, brushing off an invisible speck. Held up together, they painted a picture I knew they'd recognize: hardworking, limited, grateful. A woman they could overlook. If they judge me for this, I murmured to my reflection, I'll know everything I need to know. An hour later, my son stood by the front door, fixing his tie in our warped mirror. He looked at me, at the coat, the scarf, the sensible shoes, and for a moment, worry flickered in his eyes. Then he forced a smile. "You look nice, Mom," he said. I picked up my keys, tightened the old scarf around my neck, and stepped out into the evening, walking beside him toward a house where they thought they were about to evaluate us. They had no idea they were the ones being tested. First impressions and small cuts, I knew we'd crossed an invisible border when the potholes disappeared. One minute we were driving past laundromats and corner stores, the next the road widened, the trees got taller, and every lawn looked like it had been calmed. Sprinklers arced in perfect timing over grass so green it could have been painted on. Imported cars gleamed in driveways, low and sleek, reflecting houses with more windows than my whole street combined. "That's theirs," my son said, nodding toward a white house with columns and a front door big enough to fit my entire kitchen table through without turning it. Two stone lions guarded the steps, jaws slightly open as if mid-judgment. He parked behind a black car that probably had a name, not just a model. "Subtle," I murmured. He blew out a breath that wasn't quite a laugh. "They like to make an impression," he said. "They think it shows success." "Well," I replied, opening my door, "it certainly shows something." Before we reached the top step, the door swung open. Sophia appeared, dressed simple but somehow expensive in the way good fabric falls. Her face, though, was all nerves and sincerity. "Hi," she said, hugging my son first, then turning to me with open arms. "You look beautiful." She meant it, or at least she wanted me to believe she did. "Thank you for having me," I said. Up close, I could see the tension in her jaw. She leaned in, voice dropping. "Just don't mind my parents if they say something weird," she whispered. "They mean well. They just have their way." The same way a tide has its way with a sandcastle. Inside, the air was cool and smelled faintly of citrus and something floral I couldn't name. The foyer alone could have held my living room twice over. Marble tile gleamed under a chandelier that glittered like it had its own ego. On one wall, oversized art, abstract shapes in aggressive colors, announced that taste here came with a price tag. A man stepped out from a room on the left, fastening a cufflink as he approached. Mid-50s, good haircut. Watch, that probably cost more than my first car. "You must be Daniel's mother," he said, extending a hand. His smile skimmed past my face, already evaluating. "I'm Victor?" "Nice to meet you," I replied, shaking his hand. His grip was firm, professional, the practiced confidence of someone who assumes he's the most important person in every room. His gaze flicked to my coat, my shoes, my hair, cataloging and dismissing in the same heartbeat. A tiny frown ghosted across his mouth before he smoothed it away. Elena arrived a moment later in a cloud of expensive perfume and carefully arranged concern. Her dress was the sort that doesn't wrinkle, her pearls catching the light. "Oh, you found the house?" she exclaimed, as if we'd navigated a labyrinth instead of a clearly marked street. Sometimes people from, you know, the other side of town get turned around here. She chuckled, making it sound like a harmless observation. GPS works on both sides, I said mildly. She blinked, then laughed a bit too loudly. Of course, of course. Come in, come in. Take off your coat, make yourself at home. The way she said, home, suggested she doubted I'd been in many like this. The living room looked like a magazine spread cream sofas no one dared slouch on, glass tables bearing art books with foreign titles, vases of flowers arranged just slightly asymmetrical, framed photos lined one wall, Victor and Elena in evening wear at galas, holding oversized checks, standing on ski slopes, and beside landmarks in cities most people only see on postcards. We just got back from Italy, Elena said, noticing my glance. Florence, Rome, the Amalfi Coast. You must go one day. Travel really opens the mind. I'm sure it does, I said. Mostly I open boxes. She frowned slightly, not quite catching the humor. We sat. Victor poured wine without asking if I wanted any, offering labels like passwords. This is a lovely Barolo, he said, from our trip last year. Water is fine, thank you, I replied. His eyebrows twitched just a fraction. So, Maria, Elena began, folding her hands elegantly. Daniel tells us you raised him on your own. That must have been challenging. On a single income. There it was, the first small cut, wrapped in sympathy like a bandage. There were hard years, I agreed. We managed. Victor echoed. What is it you do again? You have a little shop? An online store, I said. Household items, imports, some custom orders. Oh, like Etsy? Elena said brightly. Our cleaning lady's daughter tried that. Such a trend now. Sophia winced. My son shifted in his seat. A woman I hadn't met yet appeared in the doorway, older than Sophia but younger than Elena, with a blazer that screamed, professional, and an expression that whispered, impatient. This must be Daniel's mother, she said. I'm Carla, Sophia's aunt. Her eyes did the same up and down Victor's had. Nice you could get time off, she added. People in service jobs have the worst schedules. I make my own hours, I replied. She blinked, clearly unsure what to do with that answer. Over dinner, the cuts got sharper, learning to smile. Between courses of food probably assembled by someone in the unseen kitchen, the conversation circled class markers like vultures. It must have been so hard, Elena said, putting a boy through school alone. We worry a lot about stability for our daughter. She glanced at Victor. Of course, we're not judging. Love is love. We just hope, Victor added, carving his meat with unnecessary force, that he doesn't come from nothing, you know. It makes things complicated. He said it like discussing weather patterns. My son inhaled sharply. Mom worked hard, he said. We were fine. Victor smiled. I'm sure you did your best, he said to me. But you know how it is. In our world, backgrounds matter. Networks, resources, that kind of thing. In my world, dinner on the table matters, I said, keeping my tone mild. Different metrics. Oh, absolutely. Elena agreed quickly. And now look, he's joining a family that can really support him, will handle the serious expenses. Venues, houses, investments. Those are our arena. You just enjoy the celebration. She touched my arm in a gesture meant to comfort. That instead felt like patting a pet. How hard it must be, always watching every cent. Carla chimed in. I admire that you didn't give up. Not everyone is cut out for a sacrifice. Her eyes flicked to her diamond bracelet. I smiled, nodded, let their words wash over me, filing away phrases like, or world, upgrade, support him, as neatly as I filed in voices at home. They thought they were reassuring me. What they were really doing was telling me exactly how they justified this match to themselves, their daughter marrying a good man from nothing, whom they would graciously elevate. By dessert, Victor leaned back, satisfied. The important thing, he declared, raising his glass, is that our daughter is marrying someone we can build up. We have the means. We'll take care of the heavy lifting. The real money matters. Daniel won't have to worry about that. He's upgrading. He said it like he'd just announced a promotion, not insulted half the table. I tipped my glass of water toward him. How generous, I said softly. Inside, I marked the word upgrading in bold red ink in my mind. Generosity, I thought, shouldn't need to stand on someone else's neck to feel tall. On the drive home, the car was quiet longer than usual. Streetlights flicked across my son's face, carving it into worried angles.
I'm sorry,
He said finally. About them. They don't hear themselves sometimes. On the contrary, I replied, watching the manicured world recede in the rearview mirror. I think they hear themselves very clearly. He glanced at me, surprised. Are you mad? At them? No. They're exactly who I expected. I looked back out the window, at our side of town coming back into view. I just need to see how they behave when there's more than dinner at stake. Contracts bring out a person's true nature. A wedding planning and the hidden trap. A few weeks after that dinner, my son started leaving his phone face down on the table. It still buzzed constantly, a steady insect hum, but now I only saw the edge of the screen light up, not the messages themselves. One evening, while we were eating takeout, because I'd misjudged my energy and his schedule, it vibrated so much the soy sauce packets jumped. You can answer, I said. I promise the lo mein won't feel abandoned. He sighed, flipped the phone over, hesitated, then showed me. At the top of the group chat, little circles him, Sophia, Mom Elena, and Dad Victor. The name of the thread read, Wedding Planning, decorated with ring and champagne emojis. My name was nowhere on the screen. They're just sorting details, he said quickly. Venue, photographer, that sort of stuff. You don't need to be dragged into every tiny thing. Tiny things like where your child will get married, who's paying, whose name goes on what paper. What did they decide? I asked. If they were going to pretend I wasn't there, I'd at least insist on hearing the echoes. He scrolled. They booked the Bellevue Hall, he said. The one with the big ballroom. Dad Victor knows the owner. The family lawyer is drawing up some standard agreements with the vendors, so everything's streamlined. He tried to sound impressed, not overwhelmed. Standard agreements. I repeated. That sounds efficient. Efficient is one of those words that can mean either organized or strategically dangerous, depending on who's using it. For a while, I heard about the wedding almost by accident. Oh, Mom, look at these flowers Alina sent, from my kitchen doorway. They picked a band, muttered between bites. Their lawyer wants us to sign something about deposits, tossed over his shoulder like it was nothing. Then, one afternoon, an email landed in my inbox from Alina. The subject line was breezy. Little meeting, just to sign off. The body was longer. She hoped I was well. She knew I was busy with my little business. And she didn't want to overwhelm me with all the boring details. But it would be so meaningful if I could come by on Saturday to sign a few standard venue confirmations so we can keep everything moving. No need to worry about the numbers. Victor and their lawyer had checked. Everything important. Anytime someone tells you not to worry about the numbers, you should start counting. On Saturday, I arrived at their house in the same old coat. This time, they didn't bother with a tour. Victor led us straight to the dining room, where the table was cleared of everything but a neat stack of papers, a heavy pen, and a man in a suit I hadn't met yet. Maria, this is Thomas, our family attorney, Victor said. He's handling all the contracts for the wedding. That way you don't have to stress about any of it. Thomas offered a professional nod, already half-seated, his briefcase open. In front of my chair, someone had thoughtfully placed the stack of documents directly where my plate would normally go. These are very straightforward. Thomas began in a smooth, practiced voice. Mostly confirmations. Here, for example, he tapped the top page, is the venue agreement. Victor and Elena are generously covering the primary costs. All this does is outline responsibilities for any additional charges or damages. Standard stuff. I pulled the papers closer, letting my eyes move slower than my mind. The first paragraphs were what you'd expect: dates, amounts, cancellation policies. Then came a clause that named Victor and Elena as primary payers, followed by a line naming my son as responsible for any unforeseen or incidental expenses, including but not limited to overtime, damage fees, and vendor disputes. My own name appeared further down, not as someone with a say, but as an acknowledging party, who agreed not to contest the charges. "I'm sorry," I said, frowning like I was trying to make sense of algebra. "I don't understand all these terms. If uh, if there are extra fees, who pays?" Thomas smiled patiently. "As written, Victor and Elena cover the contracted amount," he said. "In the rare event of overages, Daniel would assume responsibility. It's mostly symbolic. Venues like to see someone young with earning potential on the hook. It reassures them. And if Daniel can't pay," I asked, "if he loses his job?" Victor chuckled as if I'd told a sweet joke. "Your son is talented," he said. Hell land on his feet. "We're not talking about ruinous sums, just grown-up responsibilities. This is how it's done." Elena reached across the table, patting my hand. "Why, no, this is a lot," she cooed. "That's why we're simplifying it for you. These things can be very complicated if you didn't grow up with contracts and all that. Just trust us. We're making sure no one takes advantage. No one but them. Can I help a little?" I asked, letting my voice wobble. "I know I don't have much, but I have some savings. Maybe I could put a little toward flowers or my dress. I'd like to feel like I did something, even if it's small." The Alana gave me a smile that almost hid her satisfaction. "Oh, that's sweet," she said. "But you don't need to worry about real costs. We'll handle the big things. If you want to feel involved, you could sign a little family contribution agreement Thomas drafted. Nothing huge, just a note that if there are any surprises, you and Daniel are committed to helping. It's symbolic." Thomas slid another paper forward. This one was less formal looking, more friendly, promissory style language about good faith contributions and shared responsibility, with a blank line for an amount, and more importantly, signature lines for me and my son beneath theirs. "So if costs go over," I said slowly, "we promise to pay you back?" "Only if necessary," Victor said smoothly. "It's just to show we're all in this together." I nodded like a student. "I'm not very good with these things." I murmured. "Big words, contracts. I usually just sign what people tell me is fine." The way Victor's eyes lit up was almost obscene. "That's what we're here for," he said. "To guide you. No need to complicate it with too many opinions." He meant no need to complicate it with anyone who might challenge him. 2 days later, I sat in a different office, one that smelled of old books and fresh coffee. Alvarez, my lawyer, adjusted his glasses and went through their documents line by line. Every so often, he let out a low sound that was not quite a laugh. "They're framing this as generosity," he said finally, "but half of these clauses exist purely to shift risk onto your son while they keep control. And this family contribution note, it's unnecessary if they're as solvent as they claim. If they want to gift a wedding, they can do so without back doors." My financial advisor was more blunt. "You don't need them," she said, looking over my portfolio, the rental income, the trust I'd set up years ago. "If they insist on these terms, I'd walk. But if you want to see how far they'll go, don't sign. Yet." At home that night, my son came over with a look that said he'd rather be anywhere else. "Sophia's been crying," he admitted. "Her parents say you're being uncooperative, that you won't sign anything. They're stressed. She keeps asking if you could just sign to make everyone relax. They swear it's all standard. Do you believe them?" I asked. He hesitated. "I don't know. I've never done this before." "They act like they know what they're doing. And you're suspicious of everything." There was no accusation in it, just tired confusion. "Someone in this family has to be," I said gently. He rubbed his temples. "Can you meet them halfway? Please? Sign the venue stuff at least. I just want peace." His voice cracked on that last word. "Peace is expensive when you pay for it with your future." "I'll meet them," I said. "I'll listen. But I won't sign anything I don't understand." He exhaled, part relief, part frustration. "They've invited us back," he said. They want a final responsibilities meeting with Thomas to clarify everything once and for all. Of course they did. Predators like clear water before they pounce. Good, I replied, more calmly than I felt. I'd hate for there to be any misunderstandings. Inside, I made a different decision. I'd let them spread every net they had, right in front of their daughter and my son. Then, when they were sure I was caught, I'd show them exactly how sharp my scissors were. The final meeting in the mask cracks, the second time we sat in their living room. There were no appetizers, no polite small talk about travel or work. The coffee table that once held art books and candles was cleared, replaced by a precise stack of papers, a heavy pen, and Thomas's open briefcase. The chandelier's light made everything look sharper. Edges of glass, lines of print, the tightness at the corners of Sophia's mouth. Thank you all for coming. Thomas began, as if we'd had a choice. Victor and Elena thought it best to have one final discussion so everyone is clear on responsibilities moving forward. It helps avoid conflict later. His tone suggested that anyone who disagreed with him was in favor of conflict. We took our assigned seats, Victor in his usual armchair, Elena beside him on the sofa, fingers interlaced like a united front. Sophia and my son sat opposite, their knees almost touching but not quite. I was at the end of the couch, where the light from the window fell directly across the documents in front of me. Good for reading, better for seeing. Thomas slid the top agreement into the center. This is the wedding expense allocation, he said. As you know, Victor and Elena are generously covering the primary contracted costs. This document simply outlines how any unforeseen expenses will be handled. He rotated it toward us. The first paragraphs were harmless enough: venue name, base cost, lists of vendors. But midway down, the language changed. Victor and Elena hereby assume responsibility for contracted amounts, followed by a clause naming my son as responsible for any additional or incidental charges, penalties, or disputes arising from the event. Underneath, a line for his signature. My own name appeared, again, further down, only to acknowledge and consent. Elena smiled at me with practiced warmth. "We know this is a lot of words," she said. "You don't need to stress yourself. It's standard for families like ours. The important thing is that you know we're taking care of the big stuff." I tilted my head, letting my brow furrow just enough. "I'm sorry," I said. "I'm a bit slow with legal things. If there are extra costs, who pays?" Thomas clasped his hands. "As written, Victor and Elena cover what was agreed with the venue and vendors," he said. "If anything unexpected occurs, Daniel assumes the obligation. It's mostly theoretical, but venues like that security. And if Daniel loses his job?" I asked, voice soft. "Who is responsible then?" A flicker crossed Thomas's face. Victor chuckled, rescuing him. "Your son is talented," he said. "This isn't about catastrophe. This is about being a man who stands behind his commitments. We're giving him a platform. He can handle a few small risks." A few small risks. I repeated, tasting the phrase. On the couch, my son shifted, eyes dropping back to the page. Thomas pulled out another agreement. "This concerns the property," he said. "Victor and Elena have very kindly offered a significant contribution toward a townhouse here in our community as a wedding gift. To protect everyone, we've outlined co-ownership terms." He laid it flat. Victor and Elena would put up a large portion of the down payment in exchange for a controlling interest. Any sale, refinancing, or move would require their written consent. In case of deadlock between the couple, Victor would have tie-breaking authority to protect the long-term family asset. I slid a fingertip under one sentence. "If they disagree about selling," I asked, "who decides?" "As the agreement notes," Thomas said smoothly, "Victor would make the final call. It prevents messy disputes, even if they have children." I pressed. "Even if, years from now, they want to move closer to another part of town." Elena jumped in. "Why would they?" she said too quickly. "Everything they need is here. Schools, jobs, us. But legally." I asked, keeping my gaze on the paper, could they sell without his permission? Thomas hesitated just a fraction too long. "No," he admitted. Not as it's currently drafted. The silence that followed wasn't theoretical. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Sophia swallow hard. My son's jaw clenched. Neither of them had seen these details laid out this starkly before. It had all been help and support in group chats and phone calls. And this, Thomas continued, producing a third document, is a preliminary framework for any future trusts set up for potential grandchildren. Victor and Elena have experience in estate planning and want to ensure consistency. The language was dense, but the gist was clear. Any significant fund, on behalf of issue of the marriage, would be routed through structures they controlled. My name appeared once, to waive independent arrangements that may conflict with established family policy. I don't understand all this policy, I said, frowning at the page. If I wanted to save something for my grandchildren someday, would I be allowed? Elena gave a little laugh. Of course, she said. It would just be more effective to coordinate with us. You don't want to make mistakes with money when you're not used to it. Each time I asked a question, they spoke over me, around me, as if my voice were background noise to be smoothed over. Maria, Victor said at one point, these things are complicated if you didn't grow up with them. Trust us. This is protection for them. For you. He missed, or ignored, the way Sophia's fingers twisted in her lap, the way my son stared at the same sentence over and over. So, I said slowly, you decide when they can sell their house. You decide how their children's money is managed, and my son pays if something goes wrong with the wedding. And all I do is sign. I kept my tone puzzled, not accusatory. Victor smiled, thin and satisfied. All you have to do, he said, is show that you're on board, that you trust us to do what's best. We're family now. It's not a big deal unless you make it one. Thomas gathered the stack neatly, aligning the corners like he was tucking everything into place. He took out a pen, heavy and engraved, and set it gently on the top page, then nudged it toward me. Why don't we start with you, Maria? He suggested. Once you've signed, we'll have Daniel and Sophia add theirs. It really is best to formalize while everyone is on good terms. The room went very quiet. I could feel all their eyes on me, Victor expectant, Elena encouraging, Thomas neutral, my son anxious, Sophia torn. I reached out and placed my hand on the pen, feeling its weight under my fingers. For a moment, I let them see exactly what they expected. A woman overwhelmed by paper, grateful for guidance, ready to do what she's told. Then I left the pen where it was and did not pick it up. The reveal and the turning of the tables. I'm not signing, I said, and this time I didn't make my voice small. It came out calm and flat, a stone dropped in still water. The ripples showed on their faces confusion first, then annoyance. Victor chuckled like I had made an adorable joke. Maria, he said, we've gone over this. There's nothing to be nervous about. These are standard. Thomas does this all the time. Elena added, you're overthinking, sweetheart. This is exactly why we wanted Thomas here, so you don't have to hurt your head with all these details. I'm not nervous, I replied. And my head is fine. My lawyer's is too. The word hung there. Thomas's pen paused. Victor's smile tightened. Your lawyer, he repeated. You mean you took these to someone? Elena laughed, high and brittle. You have a lawyer. For what? Your little online shop. I slid my hand off the pen and reached down for my bag, the same worn purse they'd seen a dozen times. Their eyes followed, expecting tissues or maybe a wallet. Instead, I placed a slim, cream-colored folder on the coffee table beside Thomas's stack. My name and another firm's letterhead were printed clearly at the top. I took them to Alvarez. I said, he's been my attorney for years. He had some concerns. I opened the folder, pulled out the first letter, and handed it straight to Thomas. Professional courtesy, I added. Thomas adjusted his glasses and read. As his eyes moved down the page, his posture shifted from bored efficiency to something more attentive. He notes, I summarized that the expense agreement is unusually one-sided for something framed as a gift, that making my son liable for unforeseen costs while his supposed benefactors keep sole control is, how did he put it? Functionally. Predatory. Victor bristled. That's dramatic language? He snapped. We're just protecting our investment. Exactly, I said. Your investment, not theirs. I slid another sheet forward. This one a simple summary Alvarez had prepared at my request. He also suggests alternatives. I went on. If you truly want to pay for the wedding, there are ways to do it without tying my son to your debts. Gift agreements. Vendor contracts in your names only. Lots of options that don't require him as your backstop. Elena's eyes darted between the pages in my face. You had time for all this, she asked, incredulous. Between your packages and whatever. I make time for what matters, I said. That includes reading what I'm asked to sign. I pulled out a second packet of printout of my holdings. Personal details redacted but numbers clear. Since we're all so worried about starting from nothing, I said, sliding it toward the middle. Let's be honest. I own my house outright. I own the duplex on Maple that you drive past when you take the shortcut to the highway. I have an investment account that could pay for this wedding 20 twice without blinking. And, I added, placing a final sheet in front of my son, there's a trust in your name that your father and I started when you were 10. It's not billionaire money, but it's more than nothing. My son stared at the document, eyes widening as the numbers registered. Mom. He breathed. I had no idea. That was the point. I said gently. You didn't need to. Not yet. Thomas cleared his throat. Alvarez is correct about several issues, he said cautiously to Victor and Elena. From a legal standpoint, these agreements heavily favor you. In light of Maria's independent resources and counsel, I would advise re-examining the structure, especially the guarantor language. Elena turned on him. You told us this was standard, she hissed. For clients who want maximum control, he replied evenly. Most don't face pushback. I reached into the folder one last time and laid down the final card's copies of the little contribution note. Victor had slipped into my bag, and the follow-up email urging me not to overthink. Each page marked in Alvarez's neat handwriting. You asked me privately to sign this, I said, tapping a circled clause. A promise that if costs overrun, I and my son would reimburse the family at a later date. That's not symbolic. That's a debt. One that only flows one way. Victor's face flushed dark. We were, including you, he barked. You wanted to feel involved. If you wanted me involved, I replied, you'd have put my name anywhere in these documents as someone with a say. Instead, I'm just another signature to secure your position. Sophia's voice cut through, thin but sharp. Mom, she whispered, turning to Elena, you told me these were just formalities. That they didn't change anything. You said Daniel was overreacting when he worried. Tears brimmed in her eyes. You never said he'd be responsible if things went wrong, or that you'd decide if we could move. We were protecting you, Elena insisted. You don't understand how money works yet. No, Sophia said. Louder now. I understand exactly what it means to write my future husband's name under your debts. My son tore his gaze from the trust paper to look at me. I'm sorry, he said hoarsely. I asked you to just sign. I thought you were being difficult. I didn't realize. His voice broke off. I squeezed his hand. You were trusting the wrong people, I said quietly. You've never had to see me fight like this before. Victor pointed a trembling finger at me. You sat in my house and played poor, he accused. You lied by omission. You made us look like predators. I met his anger with a steady look. I didn't make you look like anything, I said. I showed up in an old coat. You chose what to do with that. You chose every word about upgrading my son, every clause that put his neck under your boot while you called it a gift. Silence pressed in, thick and electric. I needed to see. I went on, letting my gaze move from Victor to Elena, then to Sophia and my son. How you treat someone you believe has nothing. Before I entrust my son and any future grandchildren to this family. Boundaries, choices and consequences. Victor was the first to recover his voice, and when he did, it came out like a slap. So this was all an act, he said. The coat, The I don't understand contracts, the talk about having a little saved. You played us. You made us look like villains. He jabbed a finger at the stack of papers, then at my folder. You sat there while we opened our home, our plans, and all along you had lawyers and money hiding in the background. That's deception, Maria. I didn't forge those contracts, I said. I didn't ask my son to be liable for your debts. I didn't call his background starting from nothing. You did that on your own. All I did was let you think I couldn't stop you. Well, Elena's eyes were shiny, but the set of her mouth was hard. We were protecting our daughter, she insisted. You don't understand what it's like to raise a child with expectations, with a certain standard of life. We needed to be sure she wouldn't end up supporting some man and his mother forever. And you. She gestured at the documents. You show up with secret portfolios and lawyers like you're catching us out. That's manipulative. Sophia turned on her. Protecting me. She repeated, voice shaking, belying. You told me these were standard agreements. You said everyone does it this way in our circle. You said Maria was being proud and difficult because she was embarrassed about money. Her gaze flicked to me, wounded. You made it sound like she was ashamed of her life, that she didn't want to be part of things. We didn't lie, Elena protested weakly. We framed it gently. You're young. You wouldn't understand the technicalities. I understand that giving you veto power over where we live isn't gentle. Sophia shot back. I understand that asking Daniel to be on the hook for unforeseen costs, while you call it a gift, is not protection. It's control. My son finally spoke, voice low but clear. You told me Mom was overreacting, he said to Victor. That she was making problems where there weren't any. You made me feel like she was jeopardizing everything because she couldn't accept your help. He looked at me, eyes raw. And I believed you. I'm sorry. I held his gaze. You were in the middle, I said. That's where it's hardest to see who's pulling the strings. He straightened a little. I see it now, he said. He turned back to his future in-laws. I appreciate what you've offered, but I'm not signing anything that makes me your debtor or gives you final say over my life. Not for a free haul, not for a house, not even for security. If you want to help, it has to be help we can walk away from without paying you back in obedience. Victor scoffed. You're being dramatic, he said. This is how responsible families operate. You think you can start married life with nothing. No assets, no network. I almost laughed. He doesn't have nothing, I said. And even if he did, something that comes with a collar is a bad bargain. I took a breath, feeling every year of work settle behind my words. So let me make my position clear, I said. I will not sign any document that puts my son on the hook for your decisions. I will not agree to any arrangement that hands you veto power over their home or their children's future. And I will not sit quietly while you insult me because I prefer to show up in an old coat instead of waving my bank statements at strangers. Elena opened her mouth, but I kept going. I support this marriage if the two of you, I looked at my son and Sophia, stand together. Not as extensions of your parents' reputations, but as adults who make their own choices. If you decide you want a smaller wedding that you can afford without entangling contracts, I will help however I can. If you want a modest home that's in your name alone, I can contribute to that too. What I won't do is buy you into a gilded cage. The room went quiet, except for the faint buzz of the fridge in the adjoining kitchen. Sophia wiped her cheeks with the back of her hand. So our options are what? She asked softly. Sign and be owned or walk away from everything they've planned. No, I said. Your options are to sit down with someone who represents you and draft something fair. Or tear these up and start smaller. What you can't do, not with my blessing, is pretend these contracts are love. Victor shook his head, incredulous. You'd really let your pride ruin your son's chance at a better life, he demanded. My son answered before I could. My mother is the reason I have any life at all, he said. She's not ruining anything. She's stopping me from signing away the freedom she spent decades earning for us. He turned to Sophia. I love you, he said simply. I want to marry you. But I'm not marrying your parents' control. If that means fewer flowers and no ballroom, I can live with that. I can't live with checking with your dad every time we want to move or worrying that one bad invoice means I owe your family thousands. Sophia looked between us. Her parents, rigid and affronted, my son, tired but steady, me waiting. Then she inhaled, long and shuddering. Then we don't sign, she said. Alina gasped. Sophia, we don't sign, she repeated, louder. Either these contracts are rewritten from scratch by someone who represents all of us, or we rip them up. If that means a smaller wedding, then we have a smaller wedding. If that means we rent instead of living in a house you co-own, we rent. Alina stared at her like she was a stranger. You would throw away everything we've worked for because of her? She asked, spitting the last word like poison. Sophia's chin trembled, but she didn't look away. I'm not throwing anything away, she said. I'm choosing not to pay for it with my marriage. I stood, gathering my folder. You know where I stand, I said gently to the younger two. You'll always have a place at my table, with or without chandeliers. To Victor and Elena, I added, you can decide whether you want to be part of their lives on new terms or keep these papers and be right alone. That's your choice, not mine. As we left, the contracts still lay on the table between untouched crystal coasters, half a monument to old power, half a warning. For the first time, I believed they might end up exactly where they belong, in a shredder. Epilogue, a different kind of rich. By the time their wedding day finally arrived, the contracts that once sat like landmines on Victor's coffee table were long gone. In their place were simpler agreements. Vendors paid directly, no guarantor language, no hidden clauses about family policy. The venue wasn't Bellevue Hall with its crystal chandeliers and acres of marble. It was a converted old train depot with brick walls, warm lights, and a garden out back where wildflowers grew in slightly crooked rows. We paid for it the way ordinary people do, some from the kids' savings, some from my accounts, some from careful choices. Fewer guests, fewer courses, no champagne tower. The invitations were pretty but not embossed. No one had to sign away their future to stand under the string lights that night. Victor and Alina came, of course. They sat a few rows back during the ceremony, dressed impeccably, expressions smoothed into something between resignation and polite interest. Around them, their relatives whispered. I caught snippets as I passed to greet other guests. As this because of that meeting. I heard the contracts got complicated. She has a lawyer now, you know. Eyes flicked toward me, then away, curious and cautious. In this crowd, though, I wasn't just Daniel's mother. I was Ems Rivera. To the woman from the bank who hugged me and said, you were right not to let them rush you. I was Maria. To the supplier who'd driven 2 hours to bring extra table runners as a gift. The neighbor whose sink I'd helped fix when her husband was out of town clasped my hands and said, you must be so proud. He's a good man. None of them cared what I wore to that first dinner. They'd seen me in flower-streaked aprons, in work boots, in my best blazer. To them, I was a whole person, not a project to be upgraded. Later in the evening, when the dancing had slowed and the cake had been cut, Sophia found me standing just outside the hall, where the night air was cooler and the music muffled. Her veil was slightly askew, hair coming loose, cheeks flushed from laughing. There you are, she said, letting out a breath that sounded like relief. My feet are killing me. I smiled. That's how you know it's a real wedding, I said. The shoes look better than they feel. She leaned against the railing, looking back through the open doors at my son, who was attempting to show one of her cousins how to two-step and failing spectacularly. I wanted to say thank you, she said quietly. Again. For what? I asked. The emergency sewing kit? The stain stick. For not signing, she said. For protecting him. For showing me that family isn't supposed to feel like a contract you're scared to read. Her eyes glistened. My parents still think they were right, she went on. They say you humiliated them. They say you were testing them. Maybe you were. But I needed to see it too. I grew up thinking their way was normal. That love and control were the same thing. She swallowed. You showed me they're not. I looked at her, at this young woman who had chosen my son, and in doing so, had to choose herself for the first time. Tests don't create anything, I said. They just show what's already there. Your parents would have tried to hold the Rians no matter what coat I wore. All I did was give them room to be honest. She nodded slowly. I'm going to keep those boundaries, she said. I promised Daniel and myself. No more standard agreements I'm not allowed to read. No more protection that feels like a leash. There was steel in her voice now, wrapped in softness. It suited her. When the night wound down, people began drifting toward the parking lot in clusters, heels dangling from fingers, jackets slung over shoulders. We walked out together, the three of us, into a row of ordinary cars dusted with road dirt and pollen. Near the end, under a lamp that made it gleam like a polished beetle, sat Victor's latest purchase. A car designed to be looked at. A few guests lingered nearby, admiring it in low voices. Nice car, my son said, not unkindly. Do you ever wish for something like that? For a moment, I imagined my driveway with something sleek and foreign parked in it, neighbors raising eyebrows. Then I thought about interest rates, insurance, the way things that shine on the outside can eat you hollow underneath. I've had my share of bad bargains, I said. These days, I prefer investments that don't rust. I glanced at him, at Sophia, at their hands laced together without anyone else's fingers tangled in the grip. This, I added, is more my speed. At my old sedan. He opened the door for me like he used to when he was 10 and decided he was the man of the house. As we drove away, I caught one last glimpse of Victor and Alina in the rearview mirror, framed by the hall's doorway, small, distant, watching us leave but not following. The most valuable thing in that scene wasn't parked under a streetlight or hanging on anyone's wrist. It was sitting in my passenger seat, and the one behind it a man and woman who had chosen each other without selling themselves. A son whose name wasn't quietly attached to someone else's debts. A future not mortgaged for the sake of a perfect picture. People say class is about which fork you use or how many stamps are in your passport. I've learned it's simpler and much harder. Real class is how you treat the person you think can't do anything for you. Real wealth is being able to walk away from any deal, any table, any family offer. That asks you to pay with your dignity. And if you've ever been judged for what you wear, where you live, or what they think you have, tell me your story in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe, and share if you want more stories like this.